started. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. So this is our very first INA COVID support webinar series, and we're so excited to have Shenandoah and Sue to join us. Yeah. So today's webinar is advocating for yourself and plus best practices during a pandemic. So the world as we know it has changed dramatically over the past few months. Many nannies are suddenly out of work, many are still working under new circumstances, and some have already fallen victim to COVID-19 in the line of duty. And everyone is trying to do their best to keep up with a variety of city, state, and federal laws and guidelines that seem to change faster than they can be written, which is very true. In these times, it's more important than ever that nannies and caregivers have tools and resources they need to be able to advocate for themselves and understand the options available to them. In today's webinar, Shenandoah and Suzie will unpack the various benefits available for caregivers who are working reduced hours or who have been furloughed or laid off during this time. I'm going to discuss questions nannies have sent them about how to communicate with families and or agencies who have not yet adapted safe practices, and talk through how their agencies have shifted their practices to ensure the nannies and families they work with are protected. Suzie is the Director of Operations and co-owner of the Smart Sitting in New York City. After graduating from New York University, Suzie went to work with clients at some of the top advertising agencies in New York, gaining experience and understanding in marketing, copywriting, client relationships, and in the positive impact of a strong brand identity. She also worked alongside lawyers in an antitrust litigation firm, which instilled in her an appreciation for details and a patience for sometimes unavoided tedium. Focused on increasing efficiencies within the confines of a high-touch industry, Suzie has spent her time at Smart Sitting creating technological solutions that support the Smart Sitting staff while balancing the unique and personal needs of families, children, and the wonderful people that spend their time caring for them. Suzie is on the APNA board of directors.
Hi.
Hi. Hello, Suzie. Shenandoah is the CEO of Adventure Nannies and is on the APNA board of directors as well. After graduating with a very useful bachelor's degree in opera performance, she spent her 20s working in the restaurant industry, moving her up from barista to server to manager to marketing director of a large restaurant group in her hometown of Seattle. During this time, she also played over 600 shows as a solo musician and touring artist with other bands and managed to spend several years as a nanny, reading tutor, volunteer, and private music teacher. In her 4-year tenure at Adventure Nannies, she has launched many initiatives to provide resources to the nanny community, including a monthly online learning series called Summit Sessions, the first ever online version of an International Nanny Training Day, and a bi-weekly podcast called Adventure Nannies on Air. Adventure Nannies was the 2019's recipient of APNA's Excellence Award and Innovation Award, and continues to seek out new ways to support the nanny and NCS communities. Thank you so much, you guys, for joining us. We're very honored and excited to have you here. So I'll let you get started.
All right.
Thank you so much, Tati.
Sure.
Welcome, everyone. It's so nice to see so many of your faces. Suzie and I have been talking a lot over the last few weeks about navigating so many questions that have come in from candidates that both of us work with through our agencies. I think, the other agency owners on this call can all attest that kind of overnight, everyone who owns an agency's job, their full-time job shifted from making nanny placements to talking to nannies and families on the phone about like WTF is even going on right now and what the laws are and what the right thing for people to be doing is. And it has been a wild ride, to say the least.
Yeah.
I want to say before we get too far into it that, despite Suzie's past job in a legal practice and my childhood aspirations, neither of us are lawyers. And I also just want to clarify that, while we're so grateful to INA for asking us to speak and that we are both on the APNA board, we are not speaking as representatives of INA or APNA, and our opinions may or may not be shared by those organizations. You know, for the next 50 minutes, we're just two gals chatting, as we all have been doing so much on Zoom.
Yep. Thank you, Shenandoah. So we want to give this, oh, I hear a little bit of an echo there. See if it goes away. Seems all right. We wanted to give you guys the time to, you know, and space to really chat now. I'm hearing a little feedback. Is anyone hearing that, or is it just me? Yeah. I don't know how I can fix it. Try to talk quieter. Let me know if you guys have any trouble hearing me, but the space that we're all in has been so impacted. We're all here taking care of children, trying to raise amazing little humans, and yet everyone's individual situation is so different. With this whole, like, we have the shared experience right now, but at the same time, I think lots of nannies and caregivers are having really different experiences depending on like what their specific family is doing and how they're treating the situation. So I just wanted to recognize that, you know, as a community, we might be sharing an experience, but really different people might be in different places here with their families, having been laid off, having not been laid off, having been required to go to work. And that's really hard. So definitely take the time to ask questions about your specific experience, as I'm sure a lot of people will be able to relate to that. And just recognize that right now, you know, families hopefully are being reminded of just how important you all are to them. You guys do amazing, incredible, and important work. And really, truly, without nannies and babysitters and care providers, families just really can't function. And that's an easy thing for those families to forget. Like during the hustle of their day-to-day, you know, they go between their jobs and they have all these dreams and aspirations for their kids and the activities that they want and the learning that's important to them. And then somewhere in the middle of that, like, it just gets lost, you know, how important every day is, every moment is, and like this incredible role that you are assuming and the sacrifice that you're making to be there for these families. So I just want everyone to know that I hope this is a moment where everyone is reminded of that, and that this is just an opportunity for people to remember that it is really hard to do this work consistently, with patience, with creativity, and with an endless amount of love, which is what you're all being asked to do all the time. So I just hope that this is a reminder for everyone, and that at the end of all of this, that we will really be rewarded from our families with the knowledge that you are indispensable and that you are so valuable, and that, you know, this is an opportunity for them to remember that. So I just wanted to throw that out there to everyone and say it's been on my mind a lot.
I love you, Suzie.
I love you too.
Glad we got that out of the way. Nice and early in the call. So we've prepared just some general guidelines and best practices based on what to do if you are working, if you are in a place where you're considered an essential worker, which, like, they couldn't have picked a worse title for that, because obviously all nannies are super essential. It's kind of operating by a new definition right now. If you're still being asked to come in to work and it's an uncomfortable situation for you, or you're feeling unsafe, if you're asking not to come into work or you're unemployed right now, what your options are. And we have kind of prepared some FAQs that our teams have built over the last few weeks. That being said, the reason that we are here right now is to hold space and help support all of you. And so in order for us to make sure that what we're talking about is relevant, please feel free to leave questions throughout the webinar in the comments, and we will just answer things as they come up, instead of trying to imagine what maybe would be useful to you right now. I know that can change for everyone on a minute-by-minute basis.
Sure.
Before we launch into that, Suzie, I would love to just hear a little bit about some safe practices that Smart Sitting has put into place right now with the pandemic, and particularly being based in New York? Your business mostly does temp and a lot of on-call work.
Yeah, we do a lot of ongoing temp, we call it, a lot of part-time. Certainly we do all different kinds of things, but there's a huge emphasis on temp for us, both with direct referrals and with employed temporary nannies through pickup care. So certainly New York has been an interesting place to be in the midst of all of this. We made the decision early on, before New York really properly shut down. As information was coming out, we recognized that it seemed quite irresponsible to continue running a temp service. And while it would have been easier for that information to have come from from our local government earlier, it didn't happen, until around March 22nd. And so we made the decision, about a week and a half or so, or 2 weeks earlier, to shift our placements to being one-to-one family to childcare provider, and essentially end our temp service as we knew it. We declined all of our backup care requests that were anything like a one-day fill-in sitter. We just felt like socially that we had a responsibility to not contribute to this huge spread. And that was a really hard decision to make as a business owner on one hand, and also a very easy decision to make on the other hand. So it's changed a lot. We are still helping, especially with, people that need care in order to go to do their healthcare job. And we do have a small number of families that are in that position. And for them, we are, helping find someone with the same social distancing philosophies. We're trying to be really mindful of explaining that people have a different opinion sometimes on what proper social distancing may be. There's some nuance to that. Someone is, maybe saying, I don't go to the grocery store, so I order in all my meals, and somebody else might be like, I'm not letting another human prepare my food. And you don't know where the lines are under that broad title. So for anyone that we're talking to, we're making sure to really explain that possibility, that there is going to be a difference in understanding there, and encouraging them to talk about that, talk about transportation, where we're going, what are you doing when you come in? How are you sanitizing? Are you bringing a change of clothes? Are you taking your temperature before you leave for the day? All kinds of things that we have started to suggest. Can you eat, as weird as it sounds, but can you eat not with the kids? Just near them, or maybe at a slightly different time, because when you're eating and the kids are eating, that might be an extra time that germs could get spread. So, we're doing our best to sort of navigate the people that are going into work, especially if they're going into the home of someone who is potentially exposed, to help that person get to work, that we're trying to give them as much guidance as we can to keep things, from coming in and out of their home.
Yeah. I'm so happy that you guys decided that early on, Suzie. And I think that, I only want to talk about agencies for 1 second, because that's not why we're here. But I think that already in this industry, there's a huge gray area always for agencies to decide between what the actual law is and what is the moral and ethically correct thing to do. And where all of those gray areas are. And so I think it's been really, it's been hard for a lot of industries, but I know that different agency owners have been kind of slowly arriving to the conclusion that Smart Sitting came to early, that even if they're technically allowed to be, placing a nanny in one house on Monday, another house on Tuesday, another house on Wednesday, it's not a safe thing to do for the families or the candidates. And I know we've heard from a lot of candidates who are like, what should I do? I'm employed by an agency. They're asking me to do things that A, I'm not sure if they're legal, and B, I don't feel comfortable with right now.
Yeah.
Which is really challenging.
It's challenging. Yeah, for sure. We're glad to see people coming over to, doing things to support like the public health situation right now. Everyone's going to be in the same boat financially, so we might as well all try to get healthy faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But it's tricky.
Yeah, that kind of leads us into one of the first things we wanted to talk about, which are some ideas for best practices for people who are still working. And Marilyn just asked, is anyone suggesting mask use when the nanny is in the home, which I think Suzie kind of leads into the point you just started making around all of the different colors of what best practices are and people's kind of ever evolving and changing beliefs about.
Yeah, I mean, we are saying that, we're following with, local guidance. So in New York specifically, they're saying wear a mask anytime you're in public, period. I mean, so we're saying wear a mask when you're in public. Because we're focused on one-on-one relationships with families and nannies, we would leave the part of wearing the mask in the home probably up to them. And we're not actually asking nannies to continue wearing the mask inside the home. We are asking for a lot of hand washing. We're asking for them to sanitize door handles on the way in, like both the interior and exterior doors. We're asking them to wash their hands in the kitchen sink so that there's no opportunity to touch the bathroom door handle when you come in, like not having to like open doors once you're inside. We're asking them to leave their shoes outside, if they're traveling any way other than like walking or cycling, to bring a change of clothes when they get to work. And we have it all. There's like a bunch of things that we have on our site, which I'll paste the link into the chat so you guys can see them all. But these are also just our guidelines, what we're trying to provide as like a helpful resource to our families and to our babysitters and nannies. And there could be more that's being done on an individual basis. There could be less. We can only help provide the guideline as best as we can and ask the people that are employed by us to do the specific things that we want them to do, which are all of the things that I just said.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll pop it in here so you guys can see it.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the questions that we've been fielding from families and nannies across the country are like, what are the recommended best practices while someone is still working? And it has been really challenging for us to keep track of, and I think for everyone to keep track of, because the guidelines have changed so much and so quickly, and every city and state has different laws. And so, rather than saying like Adventure Nannies thinks everyone should wear a mask, or no one should do this, or everyone needs to buy a car and you can only drive in your own car and no one else can ever be in it, we've really just been encouraging families and nannies to sit down and have a conversation together to make sure that everyone feels safe and comfortable with the relationship. I think right when this started happening, that conversation looked like, have you been to China? Do you know anyone? Have you hugged anyone who has coronavirus in the last 2 weeks? Like, no? Okay. Everything should be fine. And then it has quickly evolved so quickly to like, nobody should wear a mask. Only doctors should wear a mask. Everyone should make a mask. Actually, the masks that you make at home kind of suck and you shouldn't use one. To like, now you should just like do anything with a mask. So a lot of the conversations for the last few weeks we've been encouraging candidates and families to have are, like, what are the quarantine practices outside of work? If you're a nanny, like, are you immunocompromised, or do you have a family member, partner, or roommate that you live with who could be immunocompromised? What practices are the family taking? What happens if the family asks you to live in and someone in the house comes down with coronavirus symptoms? If the family gives you the option to live in during shelter in place and you say no, then are you quitting your job, or are you furloughed? What's going to happen? And there's not one good answer for any of these questions right now. I think that it's really just important for everyone to get as much information from each other as they can and to find a really non-judgmental way to approach that in conversation, because everyone's perceptions about what matters to them and what's important for them to know are changing every day with all of this new information. And a situation that may seem like totally safe and reasonable and good for you to work during one day can feel the opposite the next day, even though nothing has changed, just with, I think, like everyone's current mental health and the ongoing news updates and everything else going on.
Can I just also like acknowledge how weird it is that we have all these questions around your very personal lives, like, and that suddenly we have a reason to ask, like, who do you live with? What's your roommate doing? Do you have someone in your house that's this or that? That's so weird, and it's such a departure from, you know, a lot of this guideline, you know, these good best practices surrounding employment, where like employment is employment and these things are separate, and having your employment be inextricably tied to what you do in your personal life is typically not the way that things go. And now we're in this really weird gray area where actually it kind of is a lot. And that's a strange place to be. It's strange for, I think, for a caregiver or a nanny or anyone to think I might not get a job that I want because I choose to work because my roommate is, or because I have a roommate at all, and my family doesn't necessarily trust me and my, you know, this roommate that I have, because they're not me and I can't really control my roommate. That's weird, right? Like for a family that wants to have an uncle or an aunt come over because their idea of social distancing is different than your idea of social distancing, like that's weird. It's all really weird and it presents a new challenge. So I don't want that to be lost on everyone. This is kind of invasive and it's not comfortable.
Yeah. Michelle Conover asked around that, what is the legality around that?
No idea.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of, when you're looking at EEO laws, again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm so sorry. If you're a lawyer, interrupt me and tell me what I said wrong. But, equal employment opportunity laws are designed to help prevent discrimination around protected traits, which are like your age, your gender orientation, your criminal record, your veteran status, your country of nationality. So you can ask someone, do you have a roommate and has your roommate had coronavirus, because you're not asking about their medical history. And also, if you're already working with a family and you have a working relationship with them, these questions are designed to prevent discrimination when an employer is considering hiring an employee. Like, is it super rude to ask someone, do you have coronavirus? Yeah. Will they come back in 6 months and say everyone who ever got asked if they had coronavirus be able to sue because that was a medically protected issue? Like, I don't think that is going to happen.
Right. Personally.
And I also think just separately from the law, they're still projecting, even with all this social distancing, hundreds of thousands of people that are going to die in this country from this. And so like yes, maybe maybe Michelle, yes, if someone says they have it and a family chooses not to work with them, it can be discrimination. Also, if someone has it and the family chooses to work with them, or if a family member has it and doesn't disclose it to the nanny, like, you are the family, like whoever the person is potentially putting everyone who they care about and who the other party cares about at risk. And so, if I'm in a position where I have to choose between like doing something that I'm not sure is the law or not, or like not giving someone coronavirus, I'm going to go with the not getting someone coronavirus and worrying about the legal side of it later. But again, everyone is kind of making up their interpretation of the rules and what social distancing means and what safety looks like to their families right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's like a natural segue to like, if you do have a diagnosis for coronavirus or you have someone that gets sick on the job, what does that whole world look like, and navigating that. We've had, certainly even with the placements that we have that are ongoing, at the moment for whatever reasons, like if it's a person that is in an essential field, or if this family and, nanny decided together that like they can, they feel safely around the way that they're working together. Maybe their nanny is driving her car or his car to work. And there's no, there's some decisions that have been made there, but then someone gets sick. We're definitely hearing about those cases in New York because everyone is getting sick in New York. So, we've been starting to, advise people on what's available to them if they do get sick, just based on the legislation that's passed. If you have, I think everyone that is under a shelter in place order they can choose not to go simply under the fact that they're under a shelter in place order, from what I understand, like as far as our relationships go. I don't want to say anything too broadly and then missay it, but I suppose what I'm trying to say is that any nanny that is in our world, if they say, hey, I'm not going to work, we're fine with that. That's totally okay. Like we are under a shelter in place order in New York. You don't have to go. And there is, a path for you if that's the decision that you're making for yourself, whether you're immunocompromised, whether you simply are, living with someone that is immunocompromised, or you just don't want to risk it. I think everyone in that position is able to, take the, if they have an employer, take the sick leave, that's available. If they have a direct employer, that sick leave theoretically is compensated back to the employer. So even there's a layout financially for the employer. If someone says, hey, I'm not coming in, I don't feel safe, like, while there's some paperwork that needs to be done in order to access the benefits that are available, that's an absolute path that anyone should be able to take. Like, there shouldn't be anyone that is forced to go under duress, or under the idea that, they'll lose their jobs, or that they have to be like, kind of like, do you know what I'm saying, Shenandoah? Like, I just don't like this, like, feeling of that someone's making me feel like I have to go against like a state order, against like maybe they're not two parents that are working from home who don't have essential jobs, and they're putting pressure on their nanny to show up. Like, I'm hearing that scenario come up a lot, and there are options, that aren't coming to work. They may not be good or great, but there are paths, that we can be taking to help guide people.
Deanna, I saw you just commented that happened to you. Are you willing to unmute yourself?
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
So my employers own a furniture business, which is a non-essential. So they closed down. And I felt that it was just best to follow. Oregon has a stay home, stay healthy. And it has led to a whole mess within our relationship, but I got backlash from them that because the guidelines were very vague, it only addressed daycares, so kids of 10. So essentially, I felt like if I didn't go to work, they offered me 2 days a week on being paid under the table. So I felt like if I didn't take them up on that offer, the job wouldn't be there for me when this was over. And there was no conversation to be had between us. It was a text message that was sent to me that told me to file for unemployment. And like, there was, after the emotion settled, there was no coming back together to try and sort out like what's best practices for both of us. So I am going out there twice a week in order to, I guess, uphold my end of the deal. But yeah, we are on a stay home, stay healthy order. So
yeah, that's such a hard position to be in. I wonder, about whether or not parents are really understanding the implications sometimes of the things that they're asking of you. And they're trying to navigate it themselves and not doing a great job.
Yeah, like they're essentially not working. They're both at home. They are doing little tasks. This is what I was told, is they're doing, some tasks related to the business, filling orders that needed to be filled, but they're not essential workers. And so it's been an interesting season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think someone just wrote this, and Jessica wrote that everyone's emotions are so heightened right now that it's important to remain compassionate to both sides of the situation. I completely agree. I think when Shenandoah and I were chatting before, we were just saying how, like, wouldn't it be nice if everyone was able to give each other like the grace that they need, like to get through the hard moments, right? And it doesn't often happen, right? Because there's so much around it. There's so much anxiety around just the whole situation. There's anxiety around your job security, about your relationship, about everyone's life sort of being turned upside down and things changing so quickly that, it's hard to get to that place sometimes of compassion and complete understanding right away, because everyone got caught off guard. And like, how that's like the worst time is to try and handle something is when you just got caught off guard. Like, it's almost like an attack. Like, I'm not going to come to work. It's like, oh, I wasn't expecting that reaction. Like, instantly I'm reacting to that possibly negatively. And it's not great. I mean, it's not breeding for a lot of great conversations. So that's why we're trying to encourage people to keep being conversation starters, keep communicating even as things are changing, even if you've agreed to something and it's not working for you because you're concerned. Keep communicating, open the conversation up again. Like, having one conversation doesn't have to be the end. We're learning new information all the time, right? So can we have that conversation again, especially, coming from this place of like, okay, I understand whoever is sitting, opposite me in this conversation, like, I understand, or I've taken some time to really try and put myself in their shoes and think about what they're going through, and maybe think about what they're not thinking about. Like, why are they coming at you with this? Like, well, we need you to come in 2 days a week or 5 days a week or whatever. Like, what might be behind that? Like, is it a lack of understanding? Is it just stress? Is it maybe that you don't want to work with them after this? That's maybe okay too to consider. This is a moment, really, I think, where people can step up to communicate and do it positively, and then some people will show their true colors. Yeah.
And I think that's where this gets tricky for a lot of nannies right now, is where to, like, which, how much of it is what we kind of always hear, try seeing it from the other person's perspective, and like, be kind to them, or like, maybe you haven't thought about it from this way. And that's still great to do during a conversation, but like, at the end of the day, your employer can't make decisions on what is going to make you or your family feel safe or secure in this situation. And so, like, yes, absolutely have a conversation, share why you're not feeling comfortable, like, share what you think best practices would be. And it's not their job to agree with you, but if they're disagreeing or they're saying, no, we do still need you to come into work, like, you do have the decision not to. And it's a really scary decision to make right now with all of these unemployment claims coming out, and, not really being sure, like, after this, when a family will be able to interview again, or when they'll be able to legally have a nanny in place. But yeah, I mean, no one can advocate for you as well as you have the power to advocate for yourself.
It looks like we're getting some really good questions in here, Shenandoah. Do you mind if I throw one of these questions at you?
Yes, and I see that Rachel is in the group, so if we get stuck, we can always just make her answer, because she's...
Oh, good. Shelter-in-place orders are not covered under the FFCRA. Good point. Thank you. if you have, so Krista asks, hi Krista. Krista asks, what if you have a family telling a nanny they must resign because they, the bosses, are essential workers and the nanny isn't comfortable exposing herself? Any advice on handling a situation like that? So they're asking, so the family is asking the nanny to resign. And technically, I mean, this might get into legal world of if you resign versus if you are let go, right? Because if you let go, then you can do unemployment, and if you resign, it's possibly a different situation. I don't know. Where's Rachel on that one? Any advice?
I mean, what we have been telling people, and Rachel, again, feel free to chime in here. Rachel Lawrence works with Homework Solutions, and they, like, far and away, like, better than anyone else in the industry, or really like any other company that I've seen, have been doing the 1000% best job of providing resources and guidance to everyone during this time. And so I also just want to thank Rachel and Homework Solutions, because they have just been amazing for the last month. In a situation where nannies either cannot come to work, a family's asking them not to come in, they're not allowed to be working under a shelter-in-place law. My understanding is that in most cases, the best situation for everyone is for the family to furlough that employee. Furlough is essentially the same as being laid off, but it means that your employer has the intention to rehire you. The benefits in terms of furloughing for collecting unemployment is that there's no waiting period from when you apply to when you start receiving the money, whereas there's usually a much longer wait depending on your state. And another benefit to unemployment right now because of this crisis is that the federal government is giving an extra up to $600 a week on top of your unemployment money. So unemployment, depending on your state, generally pays out between half to 2/3 of what you were normally getting paid, plus now $600. And that, I think, is, yes, thanks, Sue. And also being furloughed means that you don't have to prove that you're looking for a new job while you're collecting unemployment, because the anticipation is that you'll be returning to your old job. If after furlough you end up not returning to your old job, nothing bad happens, which is very nice. And, something that I just want to mention while we're talking about unemployment, I've talked to a lot of nannies about, and have talked to some other businesses about, in terms of business owners applying for grants and some of these loans, is that a lot of people have a really negative connotation about applying for unemployment and taking that money. Like, there's the thought that you're taking it away from people who need it more from you. And that is, like, my understanding right now is that is really not the case, that the government recognizes that this is like an unmitigated disaster that is really like damaging a lot of people's lives right now. And the government is pouring like literal, like unimaginably high amounts of money into providing resources and services for people right now. And their goal is for people to take the money and use it so that they can come out of this crisis being stronger than before. And so if if there's something like inside of you that is hesitating to collect unemployment right now, whether it's through furlough or because your hours have been reduced, I would really encourage you to like take a look at maybe why that is and what some of the ideas are that are going into that. Because the money is there for everyone, and because the federal government has stepped in on this level, there's not like an amount of it that's going to run out and no unemployed people will be able to get it anymore. Like there's enough for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm happy to jump in if you want a quick bit on the unemployment.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Sure. Sorry, I couldn't get myself off mute at first, despite doing a million of these lately. So couple of points. Family First does not cover if you are in shelter in place. That is not the same phrase as quarantine. Quarantine means that you have been specifically told to quarantine yourself by a medical professional or a representative of the government, not shelter in place or stay in place orders. So that doesn't count for your employer getting reimbursed for that money.
Oh, good.
That
Thank you
being
for clarifying
said,
that.
sure. And, that's the thing is these terms are so closely related, but have these minute differences that make it definitely one thing or another. It's so confusing. And then as far as unemployment, yes, go file. If you're furloughed or you can't go to work, you're sheltering in place and your employers cannot provide means for you while you're doing that, go apply for reduced hours, go apply for furlough, go apply for being laid off, write something in the box for the reason that has to do with COVID-19 to get the attention. That being said, everyone should know that sort of other regular employment laws do come into play. If your employer loses their job, even if you're getting the sick leave or the paid family medical leave, and they choose to eliminate your position, they don't have to continue paying you that. You would then move on to unemployment. And I agree that with Shenandoah that people seem to be afraid or worried that there is recourse with unemployment applications, or they feel like it has some sort of social stigma, or whatever it is. There is a reluctance there that I'm seeing in these calls we're taking every day. And I couldn't second what Shenandoah said more, which is go, go, go. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. We'll all pull through this together. And I've seen several comments about what if I was paid off the books? Go talk to your previous employer or current employer that was paying you off the books and say, oops, I now know we shouldn't have done this way. Can we work together and fix this? Hopefully the answer is yes. It's much cheaper to fix this for the family now than it will be if they sort of wait and see what happens. They can just amend a tax return. They can say oops to the unemployment office before all these filings take place and say, oh gosh, didn't know I was supposed to do this. Here's my filing. Yes, it's late, but here it is. And that is a much better way to go about this than sort of waiting and seeing, because employees can still file for unemployment and still receive benefits if they're being paid off the books. It's just a much more complicated process. It's not going to be pleasant for a family. So it's better if we can go have these conversations. Nannies are beautiful educators. That's part of the thing that we're all good at. I was a nanny myself, and go educate this family in a kind, compassionate way about what you learned from other nannies in our community so that you can fix the problem and everyone can do better and get what they need. You shouldn't have to choose between taking care of your family or taking care of your nanny family. There are ways to do both.
Yeah, that's really well said, Rachel. And I will say that we have had a number of situations like that where we have worked together to get people retroactively filed, and it's been a success. It's been more of a success now than it ever has been before. So if you're in that position, I definitely think you should start that conversation. Okay. We have about 12 more minutes. We have a lot of questions, and Rachel, I would say feel free to jump in if there's anything that that is sort of in line with like the CARES Act or the FFCRA stuff, just to make sure that we don't misquote it, because it is a little bit confusing in some cases. So Rachel, you were saying if you do get a doctor's order to stay home or quarantine, let's say right now, here's the thing that's been coming up a lot is, well, I have a cold. I don't think it's COVID-19. Like, what should I do? Like, can I still work? And it seems like what we've seen happen is that people are being told, well, just quarantine just to be safe.
Yes, so doctor's orders right now are not going to come in the form of an examination, most likely. This is call whoever that is, right? Your primary physician. If you don't have one, call your insurance company, find out who you can call. And yes, 9 times out of 10, this conversation is going to go along the lines of, I don't know if I have a cold, allergies, or COVID. And your doctor is going to do a short assessment, or whoever, the representative is going to do a short assessment. and then they're going to say, stay home. My response to this would be, great, document some way that you can, whether it's, I called this organization on this day and time and so told me to do this, or best case scenario, say, that's really great. Is there some way I can get an email or any kind of a documentation that I've been asked to do this for my employer? Most people are going to have a mechanism for that. If they say no, say, at least then can I take some form of identifying information that you have directed me to do so, which usually will be, their name, or perhaps they have an identification number for their position or something like that.
And that extends to even to exposure?
Again, I would seek what they call seeking medical attention. So I would call and say, I believe I've been exposed. How should I handle this? Can I get some form of verification for my employer?
Got it. Okay, I think that might help some of the questions that are in the queue at the moment.
Yeah, and at this point, with everything that's going on, like if you call a healthcare provider, no one is going to say, no, that doesn't sound like it. You should just keep going to work. It's probably not that. I guess 18 days ago, I happened to know that, flew back into the country from Germany, and had to like fill out something and get my temperature swabbed as I was getting off the plane, and then got a little infographic that was like, congratulations